Hey, how's it going? I'm Chris, and this React snack is all about the useEffect hook. So the useEffect hook is a nice way of kind of cleaning up some of those class-based lifecycle methods you might be familiar with. So if you're thinking of component did mount and component did update and component will unmount and all those class-based lifecycle methods, useEffect can be used to consolidate and simplify some of that code and cut down on some of the redundancies that you might have seen in some of your class-based components. So to give you a quick rundown of what we're working with, I'm just going to scroll down my little app component here. You can pause if you want to see something in detail. But what we're doing is producing a little UI where we've got some dynamic money that is going to be calculated anytime we make a change to our subtotal, to our bill here, and then the tip percentage. So it's just going to calculate a little tip for us. So pretty simple. Again, the purpose of this is just to show you how the useEffect hook works. And then you can kind of take that information and use it in your own projects. So first, we want to import it at the top. So useEffect. Oh, geez. All right, there we go. And then down below, I'm going to say useEffect. And I'm just going to call calculate tip. So before I hit save, take a look over here, seeing that it's $0. I'm just going to hit save. And notice that it updated without me doing anything. That's because the useEffect hook's default behavior is to run anytime there's a re-render. And so when we save this here, triggered a re-render and updated this this dollar amount. And so you'll see here, if we change the total, anything I'm entering is being updated. Whoa, that's a huge dinner. And then let's say I put this back at 100. Now if I change the tip to say 20% or 50%, it's updating that automatically. So anytime the state changes, remember, causes a re-render, and anytime a re-render happens, whatever is inside this useEffect hook will run. So I mentioned that's the default behavior. So here are some other things that you can do with the useEffect hook. We can add an array in between this closing parenthesis and last little curly brace. And now what this will do is it will say run calculate tip once whenever the component mounts, and then don't run it again. So my component has mounted and nothing is changing. So obviously in this example, it's not a great user experience to like type stuff in and nothing happens. But that shows you that the useEffect hook, if you have an empty array as your dependency array here, that can act much in the same way as a component did mount lifecycle method, much in the same way that method would work. Another use of this array is you can kind of think of it as like, hey, look out for these changes and then run whatever's inside. So if I say tip percent, I want to look out for a change in tip percent. And so if you look just at this useEffect hook, what it's saying is calculate the tip only when tip percent changes. So if we look back on our interface here, I'm updating the subtotal, but nothing's happening. So if I set this, let's say, to 200. Now, if I change the tip amount to 10%, now it updates. So it's running because the tip percent state is changing. But again, if I try and update the bill, nothing's going to happen until I update the tip. And then to show the flip of that, if I were to say only run this calculate tip function when the subtotal changes, it's just going to do the opposite. So my tip is changing, nothing's happening. But if once I start updating my build there, it's triggering a re-render because the state is changing, and because I'm telling it to look out for the subtotal changes in the subtotal, then it's going to run calculate tip in that case. Now, you may have noticed it's giving me an error. It's telling me has a missing dependency, calculate tip. Basically, what this is saying is, hey, calculate tip is relying on subtotal and tip percent, and you're only calling in one of those little bits of information. Is not exactly what it's saying, but that's kind of the point. So it's basically saying, like, are you sure you want to do this? So if I was putting this out for like other people to use, no, I wouldn't want to do it. But this just shows you how to use that dependency array as part of the useEffect hook. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. And now we're back to working normally. So update that. So everything is working like it should. Now, let me show you something else that's kind of cool about the useEffect hook. Let's say, for example, that we want to lighten the mood a little bit and fetch some data from a jokes API. What we can do is we can actually put that all in our useEffect hook. So useEffect can actually call multiple functions and have multiple things going on inside. So if I've got this nice official joke API, and what I can do is, so it's going to give us an ID, a type, a setup, and a punchline. What did the digital clock say to the grandfather clock? No hands. Awesome. All right, so that's what we're working with here. So I'm just going to use the fetch API. Again, this is not a lesson on data fetching, but just to kind of show you what's going on. So I'm going to chain on my thens. So response.json. And then just to show you what's happening, I'm going to console log the data that we're getting back. And okay, so there we go. We got an object here. I'm going to show you something quirky about this useEffect hook real quick. So remember that I said that the useEffect hook, the default behavior is to run whatever's inside anytime the state changes. So you might be able to predict what's about to happen here. Whoa. That's a lot of API calls. Yikes. All right. So remember, we can set that dependency array to be empty, and then that way it'll only call it one time. So there's my little data about the joke, and then I can change this, but oh wait, hang on. Now I'm updating my tip, and now like the calculator's broken. So another cool thing about useEffect is you can actually use it more than once. So if I have like kind of different operations going on in different pieces of my component, I can break these pieces of useEffect into their own useEffect. So I can get rid of this empty array here, and then I can just use useEffect again. And I'll just put that same fetch on the inside, and this time set that one to an empty array. I'm not getting any sort of errors here either, which is nice. And now if I change this, my tip calculator still works. And I'm only getting that one response. And so if you wanted to go ahead and like put this onto your actual interface so the user could see it, what you could do is just set up like a little variable and use that use state hook. So I could say my variable is a joke, and then set joke, and then use state, and I just break this into an object. And let's see, I'm getting back a setup already. So I'll just initially set that to an empty string, and then a punchline to an empty string. And then let's just say I'll put it at the top. So I'll have a paragraph tag that says, that's going to give me my joke.setup, and then another one that's my joke.punchline. Joke.setup, and then joke.punchline. So it's not giving me anything yet because I haven't like told this to do anything yet. And that's going to come from here because we're just console logging it. So instead of console log, what I can do is use that set joke from up here. I'll say set joke, and I'll say that the setup is equal to the response.setup, and that the punchline will be the response.punchline. And now this useEffect hook is calculating my tip anytime there's a re-render. So anytime I change the input for my bill or for the tip. And then this second useEffect hook, because it's set to an empty array, is only going to run once when the component mounts. It's going to get my data from this jokes API here, and then it's going to set my joke variable from the top to equal the setup and the punchline that I'm getting from that API. What do you call a bear with no teeth? A gummy bear. Awesome. All right, so those are just some of the many ways that you can use the useEffect hook. It's pretty powerful, and it has the potential to clean up your code quite a bit. So super flexible, super powerful, super awesome. So if this video was helpful to you, go ahead and subscribe, and that would be great. If not, then go ahead and let me know in the comments what would have been more helpful so that in future videos I can come back and clear things up and help you out. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.